How about the timing on this and how many touch points are needed, right? So like when you were giving that example of that CEO that was stopping by everyone's desk, it sounds like that's a regular practice that he has, is to walk around and kind of connect with his team. I'd love to hear the significance of that and how many times you have to touch someone, and then for them, to take, because the goal of this is, of course, is to go a little deeper, right? So for each conversation, you're able to take the conversation a little bit deeper and learn more about that person.
Super great question. Depends upon your role and relationship with that person.
Okay.
I love that you asked that question, because we're getting not only how to do it, but when. If you're the CEO, one really kind of intimate, connected conversation, it can be enough. You don't have to do another one. If you've got 50,000 employees, you don't need to make a point to say, wow, I'm going to check in with Whitney every quarter. You don't have to do that. You've got too many people. But they'll feel really appreciated and connected and trust you that you took your time out to connect with someone that you don't work with on a regular basis. Now, if you're the manager, one time is not going to gain you points. You're going to need to do more than that. So I would recommend, something. Generally, always hold a spirit of curiosity when you're working with direct reports. You want to be doing more asking of questions than telling, because that's where you learn information. That's where you learn how are things going based on what I asked them to do, what obstacles are they running into, and how can I help in that? So you learn more about the actual work that's being done. But I would say some of these other questions, you might want to, some of these that are more like getting to know the person a little bit more, sprinkle those in, kind of every quarter.
Okay.
But making curiosity more of your regular muscle as a manager will help you a lot. But we want to use it intentionally. If we've got a big project, we don't need to ask necessarily about, where do you want to go on vacation this year? We might say, okay, what are your concerns about the project? What resources do you need on the project? What can I be doing to support you? Has anyone caused you any issues up to this point, or any roadblocks or blockers that I might need to go talk to? When do you think we need to talk about this again? So you can give me updates, because I don't want to, get in your kitchen, but I also don't want to be so distant that if you need help, I'm not available.
Yeah.
So there's lots of questions you can ask, all curious, helping to kind of create a really good game plan. So again, it just depends upon context.
So before we started the show, we were talking about, because I'd asked you, do you feel like people just kind of randomly open up to you, like you've never met them before? And maybe it's your server at a restaurant. We were talking about the Uber driver, right? How does approachability play into this? Like a little bit of your presence coming into the room almost and setting you up for the fact that this is a person I can be vulnerable with.
That's the key right there. So that is a really important statement. This is a person I can be vulnerable with. So if I come in like serious, grumpy, and maybe I've got, in clinical terms, we'd say a flat affect, right? I'm happy. I'm sad. It's just the same expression all the time. In absence of communication, people assume the worst. So if you come in with that kind of flat affect, it doesn't feel approachable, and you start asking questions, people are going to experience it as you're interrogating them. So you've got to make sure you're trying as best you can to have a little more of an inviting persona, a little more relaxed. If that's not your style, then clearly state upfront why you're asking questions. I'm going to ask a few questions. I just really want to get to know you a little better. You don't have to answer them if you're not comfortable, but it's really just for me to know you better, know how I can support you. Set up kind of a context for that. You make a good point around this that I want to extend upon. The one question we want to be really careful to avoid, and I actually used this sentence stem earlier, and I noticed I did it, but it was okay because we have a good relationship, and you didn't notice it. But it's a dangerous opening question, sentence stem. Why? Why'd you wear that blazer today? Immediately, you're like, what's wrong with this blazer? I like this blazer. It's a good looking blazer. I paid $500 for this blazer. You probably didn't pay $500, but you know what I mean? So it immediately puts us on the defensive, because why is a critical question. I'm now critiquing your thinking. I'm judging your thinking. Why'd you do this? Why'd you fulfill the customer's request that way? Why'd you fill out the report this way? Why'd you make that decision? It is an implied judgment to it. Now, there's a time and place to do that. Maybe you need to help someone improve their critical thinking, and you're going to tell them, I'm going to ask a series of why questions. Fine. Or you're trying to hone in on something that went wrong, and you're the CEO, and you want to kind of dig into what went wrong. Well, why? And then there's a time and place for it. But if you do it in relationships that you're trying to build, it will set up a defensive dynamic. You don't want to go home and say, why'd you make that for dinner? That will not yield to a productive evening with your significant other. You may be wondering why they made that for dinner, but you can walk in instead and go, smells good in here. I'm curious. What'd you make for dinner today? This is different than usual. And you can ask it in a different way.